Welcome to another episode of Euphoric, the podcast. Today I'm sitting across from Leslie Jackson, who I met in one of the masterminds that I was in last year. And Leslie is fierce about bringing her movement and mission to the world on why ambitious and successful women can't not focus on their health if they want to get to the next level. So I know you and I are going to have such a good conversation, and there's so many topics I want to ask you about, but how are you doing today?
I'm so good. Honestly, I feel so good. No complaints.
Okay, but you weren't always here, right? There was a part of your life where you felt very bad. And so
Yeah.
walk us like to the beginning, like the origin story of why you got involved in this work in this first place and what was kind of happening in your life or your symptoms and how did you know that things needed to change?
Yeah, for sure. So before I stepped fully into my work as a functional nutritionist, I was in the technology sales space. I was in enterprise technology sales and I was really traveling all over the country and trying to keep up with that lifestyle and realizing that my numbers were performing, but in order to sustain those numbers, I was going to have to keep functioning.
Okay, sorry. The sound cut out. Yeah, I can't hear you at all.
Connected to.
Okay, now I can hear you.
Let me I'm going to switch just to my computer audio.
Okay.
MacBook Air speakers disconnect. I'm just going to pull it a bit closer here. Air speakers, Leslie's iPhone. Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Do you mind just like wherever you think the last full sentence ended?
Yeah, yeah, I'll try to pick up where I left off.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically, my output was not matching my input, and I felt it. Like, I felt myself really having to fight so much against fatigue and just procrastination in order for me to get to do the things that I needed to do. And maybe was I in a career that didn't really inspire me? Yes, for sure. But also, I knew that I just didn't feel well. And there was this side of me that really wanted to people please and fit in with the lifestyle of a enterprise sales rep, to go to all the parties, to entertain all the clients, go to the late night dinners, take them out, schmooze and everything. And I was just really disrespecting my needs. And my body really started to get to a point where it was like, I can't keep up with this mask that you're asking me to put on every day. Like, I just wasn't enjoying my work as much. And so I had a moment though that was absolutely the breaking point because I felt things were boiling, like things were starting to escalate with me not being able to keep up with my work. And then there was one day where I was on the way to the airport and I silently had a panic attack in this Uber because the thought of me flying across the country, which was what I was going to the airport to do, was just so overwhelming. I was like, I cannot handle this today. I cannot handle this today. And I just like full body, I felt the sensation of like panic and like, I can't do this. My body was literally starting to reject what I was demanding of it. And on that Uber ride, I told my Uber driver, I was like, I need you to turn around and take me home. I cannot go to the airport. And I went home and I slept for 16 hours. And I woke up the next day and I ordered an IV drip to come to my home to give me an IV because that was like one of the band-aid approaches that I would use to like rehydrate myself and just try to like power through. And that was my wake up call. That was so unsettling and uncomfortable and painful to experience that after that experience, I was like, I cannot keep going at this rate. I can't keep functioning like this. And About 5 years prior to this, I had had a run in with Western medicine that completely rocked my world and completely rewired my willingness to blindly trust Western medicine to be able to help me in restabilizing my nervous system and helping me with symptoms of anxiety and things like that. And that was that I had actually discovered 5 years prior that I had been misdiagnosed with ADHD. I had been on medications such as, medications similar to Adderall and Ritalin and things like that for about 3 to 4 years that really dysregulated my nervous system. And I should have never been on them in the first place. And it was a really painful process of me regaining my nervous system stability, removing those medications from my system. And that's when I really lost trust in Western medicine. So that is when I really originally started to explore what are natural ways for me to be able to get my personality back and to enjoy life again and not be so angry. And that is that is why when I reached that breaking point in my previous career, I did not go the route of taking a medication. I went to looking at myself in the mirror and realizing, like, Leslie, like, what types of things are you doing that you know are making your performance harder to accomplish? Those things were staying out late at night, not respecting my sleep schedule, not hydrating enough, drinking, and acting as if I was one of those types of people that can just hold a hangover and just push through it and expect the same level of performance mentally and physically as I do when I'm not hungover. I just wasn't one of those people. So I gradually started to release this obligation to keep up with the Joneses in that sales career. And I stopped drinking. I really started to prioritize eating well. Like when I would go to conferences and things, like I wouldn't eat what they offered at the buffets. Like I would order my own food. I had a whole process for that. And then I started to really heal and I really started to get my energy back and I really started to get my peace of mind back, which is really what I was so desperate to reconnect with. You know what I mean? And so once I started to hold myself to a higher standard, and hold my fuel and my lifestyle to a higher standard, which is very different from what a lot of people around me were doing, I started to run circles around them. I
Mm.
started to outperform them. My numbers like were absolutely skyrocketing and I was actually working less. I wasn't saying yes to every single trip that I was asked to go on. I was more methodical about when I would actually get on a plane and go visit clients. And I kind of turned my brand with my clients from I'm the party girl that takes my clients out to do all the fun things to when Leslie comes to visit, she's going to make sure that the meal that she's bringing in for our meeting is like the most wellness focused, lush, like anti inflammatory meal. And I turned into the sales rep that would take my clients, like we would go to Vegas and they would do all the late night things with other sales reps. I was the sales rep that would take my clients to the IV station and get them rehydrated. I would bring them gifts that were wellness focused. And I really just made it part of my brand. And that really made me stand out. And I was the one that at the end of the conference, I wasn't dragging my feet around. Like I still looked well and I had great performance. I was very sharp and it was because I started to move differently. And then my clients started to ask me wellness related questions like, Leslie, how do you do this? Like, how do you look so great? And like, your energy is so great throughout this entire conference when most people were burning out.
Yeah.
And once I started to really coach my tech clients on nutrition, I was like, okay, maybe it's time for me to pivot and like fully step into my functional nutrition role. And that's when I exited my sales career and really made it my mission to help people around me understand how much control and influence they actually have over their state of mind, over their performance, their energy, their capacity. And that's what's really important to me. And so I really find a nice connection between my client base that's very performance focused. They care about the same things. They want to be able to outperform. They don't want to burn out. They want to have that mental sharpness and to be able to outperform.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. And I love how like the very first initial, changes that you made, it was just like really recognizing like what has to go, the alcohol doesn't stay here. But also I didn't even think this would come up. I know so many people who also, work in sales or in that client world where this idea of hosting and schmoozing is very much baked into the culture. And I love the way that you explained it. And, something that I've picked up on as well is like, obviously nobody feels good after drinking. Everybody will wake up the next day feeling like crap. But what happened is that in a business relationship with that, a lot of times people feel that like lowness and that shame, and they might even subconsciously attach that to you as the sales rep. So then they feel more uncomfortable around you in the future, even if they don't know why. And so I think it's so cool how even without knowing, how this was playing out, you were already being like, I'm the sales rep that's going to make you feel good and you're going to want to be around me and you're going to like really look forward to our sessions together and not like kind of look forward, but then kind of regret later. You know what I mean? I think
100%.
that's
Yeah, like
so
you're
cool that
gonna
you did
feel
that.
good. You're gonna feel great after we go out. We're gonna go to somewhere like I would take my clients to the spa. Like I would take them to wellness centers and I would get really creative in that way and just I kind of just created my own path with it. And that's why I say I rebranded because I used to be the party girl, drinks, all the things. But there's a whole like people love being schmoozed with wellness things. So
Yeah.
that's what I did.
And that's so smart. Like for anyone listening who's in that kind of role and is just like, how do I make this change with I have to the expectation to drink? Like take Leslie's personal branding reinvention, go run with
Yeah.
it. Okay, so now we pivot into like, let's do this full time. Let's actually help people. I'm sure you get the training and the functional medicine and the root cause healing. What are you now seeing in so many of your clients? And I know, something that is frustrating with the conventional medicine is that there's something off, there's some reason, there's some symptoms, some fogginess or tiredness that's getting people to feel, issues. I think so many people are struggling with hormone imbalancing, like, we're getting older, thyroid levels are changing. Like, there's just so much going on. And yet, when you go to your doctor, they're like, everything's fine, or come back to me when this really hurts. You know what I mean? And I've
Mhm.
obviously had my own frustrations on my fertility journey. So I'm just curious now, as you step into this role more formally and you're starting to help people, what are some of the symptoms that you're seeing that are so common but so often neglected by the conventional medicine system?
Mm, yes. Fatigue. Fatigue, painful periods, bloating, adult cystic acne, anxiety, depression, eczema, infertility. A lot of these things, they're not even really asked about when you go to the doctor. And sometimes I'll be in conversation with a prospective client and I'll ask them what their symptoms are. And they're like, I get acne, I have painful periods. But then they realize that what I consider a symptom is when you are chronically bloated, when you have acid reflux, when you have chronic headaches. Those are all signals that the body is giving. And what I am seeing in my clinical practice, where I do run functional lab testing and I can actually see the data behind the experience that my clients have, is that a lot of women specifically that are very high performance focused, they have gone decades throughout their career being able to really muscle through that fatigue, muscle through the painful periods, and the brain fog. I can't believe I missed that at initial. Like brain fog specifically is not talked about. And that is one of the most disruptive things to a performance focused, woman. And what I'm seeing when they come to me, it's usually not when they're in the state of high cortisol, which is what is talked about online so much. A lot of people think that they have high cortisol because their face is puffy and they gain weight in their midsection. And I see that occasionally. But I don't actually usually see women that are in that state of adrenal fatigue. Because when you have high cortisol, you kind of feel on top of the world. Like you're functioning in that masculine, you're functioning in that high output fight or flight. Your body hasn't given out yet.
Mm.
But there is a stage of adrenal fatigue that is not talked about enough, which is actually what I see majority of women dealing with, which is where their adrenals are depleted and their testosterone is depleted, and that's causing their estrogen to be depleted, which is what makes women feel like they're going through menopause before they're actually going through menopause. So, what I am seeing in functional lab testing is that women that come to me very burnt out, they have brain fog, fatigue, they're procrastinating more than they would even really like to admit, and they're not sleeping very well. Usually at that point, they have very low output of adrenal hormone, DHEA. And this is a hormone that conventional Western medicine does not test for. So when you go to your primary care provider and you explain these symptoms, they don't even have the tools. They don't have the lab testing to test for that. A, B, they aren't even trained on how to understand the metrics. And the other thing is that when you go to your primary care provider, it's not always their fault that they don't have the right tools and access to things because they are oftentimes handcuffed to what the insurance companies are willing to cover. And similarly to what you said towards the beginning of this, is that you're dismissed and they are just waiting until you have a severe condition before they actually do something. That's because the insurance companies aren't really looking to take a proactive approach. They are doing the absolute bare minimum. They're going to cover the absolute bare minimum. And they're also not always going to cover the industry leading lab providers that actually provide the most high quality, dependable data. So that's why I went to functional medicine to really understand why I was procrastinating so much. It wasn't because I had ADHD, it was because I was completely adrenally depleted. And your adrenals are what produce your cortisol and your adrenaline. So that's why for decades, a lot of women can muscle through with that cortisol and that adrenaline. But when you have too much production of cortisol and adrenaline, your sex hormones get the short end of the stick because your body is always going to prioritize survival over optimization. And so when we are using up so much of our resources, like our vitamins, our minerals, our nutrients, our macros, to produce so much cortisol and adrenaline, there's only so much resources to go around. And like I mentioned, your sex hormones are really what are going to get the short end of the stick. And that is what I'm seeing causing so much of the brain fog, the irritability, moodiness, painful periods, fatigue, weight gain, weight loss resistance. And that is something that can really only be healed if you get the definitive picture of where you are and can tailor your healing process to what your metrics actually are. And that's where my work comes in.
Okay, it's amazing. And it's just, it's so nuanced, right? And there's so much of this conversation I feel like that's not being had. It's not just getting older or aging. It's like there's so much, I think, in our environment and the way that we eat and just all these different lifestyle factors that it almost makes inevitable that, people at some certain point go through these symptoms that you're talking about, but then have absolutely no roadmap. And I kind of love how, there is the conventional medicine that's there for us. And if you need a surgery or if you need like something intensive to happen, like that's always there. But like I think it's actually really cool that the environment has almost forced this new world and this new class of, really making the lifestyle and the functional changes that you can to optimize your health for longevity and, healing these kind of symptoms and stuff like that. That's available really to all of us in many different ways. And it's like I don't know how to say it. It's like this huge part of the pyramid that you get like as the foundation, and then that allopathic medicine is like the top of the period when you really need like the severe care and stuff like that. And I think
Yeah,
it's just
I
like
like
so
to
cool
think
that you do
of
that.
conventional medicine should really be looked at as the alternative medicine. And what conventional medicine calls holistic Chinese and naturopathic medicine is alternative medicine. Naturopathic medicine has been around for thousands, centuries, thousands and thousands of years. Western medicine has been around for just a few hundred years.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we want to heal the root cause, and we want to try to heal the root cause first. We want to see if we can naturally address this. If the body is too far dysregulated, too far depleted, has been in that state for too long to the point where it's escalated to disease, that's when the alternative is to use Western medicine to keep you alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Western medicine will keep you alive, but it will not keep your quality of life alive. That is only something that you can do.
Yeah. So I know you do the functional testing on each of your clients, and I'm sure everyone's journey is so unique to them and their specific lab results and all that good stuff. But I'm curious if you have just like non-negotiable standards that most of your clients you have adopt as they're going on this healing journey, whether it's from the foods they eat or how they move their body or just certain practices that maybe we weren't even taught or were lost a long time ago. Like, what are some
Mhm.
of those? And maybe you could even share from your own routine as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So these are going to be really unsexy, but they're actually what moves the needle the most. By far, where I see blind spots across most of my clients is that they're not eating enough vegetables. Everyone's obsessed with getting enough protein. Protein, yes, for sure. It helps with building skeletal muscle, balancing your blood sugar, balancing your nervous system. But vegetables is where the medicine in food comes from. Vegetables are where your vitamins and minerals and nutrients are sourced. And I recommend 75 to 80% of your daily nutritional intake should come from produce, not animal protein. I eat animal protein. I'm a huge proponent for it, but it's not the center stage of my diet. And reason being is not only because of the vitamins, minerals, and nutrients, but the fiber. So many of my clients come to me with a completely fiber deprived gut microbiome, and that's problematic. That causes so much backup in your intestines. And when you're not having at least 2 to 3 bowel movements a day because you're not eating enough fiber and you're not hydrating enough, that creates such a high toxic load throughout the system that can also be a very primary root cause of brain fog, of painful periods, of hormone dysregulation, of bloating, indigestion, and chronic headaches. It's just simply you're not eating enough fiber. So, eating enough fiber, number one. Number two is walking. We have to walk a minimum of 7 to 10,000 steps a day. And I say this because the human body was designed to move a lot. And I'm really grateful for that. We should all be really grateful for the fact that our bodies were designed to be able to host a lot of activity. So we, a lot of us work from home now. A lot of us are not just naturally getting that movement in. So literally just getting that baseline 10,000 steps a day helps tremendously in so many different categories. It helps with digestion. It helps with detoxifying excess cortisol. It helps with regulating your nervous system. It helps with generating energy. So that's the other category that I see is a typical blind spot amongst my clients. They're like, I do the hard workouts. I work out five to 6 days a week, but then that's for 45 minutes a day. The other 16 hours of the day, they're sedentary. And that causes inflammation because again, our bodies were designed for consistent movement. So that's the other category. Third is hydration. I've had a lot of women that have come to me with chronic constipation, which causes a slew of follow up symptoms when that's the case. And it's simply because they're not drinking enough water. So, just as like a baseline recommendation, I recommend half of your body weight in ounces a day in water. And ideally, we're adding in mineralization to that water because your adrenals run off of minerals, potassium, calcium, sodium, and magnesium. And that's another really primary root cause that I see for women that are suffering from adrenal fatigue, which is AKA burnout. They have women who are very high performance focused. They go through more minerals and more B vitamins than the average woman.
Mm.
That doesn't mean that we have to shrink our life or to accommodate for overproduction. We need to match our output to our input. So if we're running through more of that B vitamin resource, if we're running through more of that mineral resource because we have to hold more stress and capacity to perform at a higher level, we have to have more mineral resources. So I highly recommend, if you want to be able to have greater capacity and not be overwhelmed easy, not overstimulated easy, your adrenals have to be, you have to double down on supporting them. And it's pretty simple. It's just as simple as adding in electrolytes into your water, getting enough hydration. Being dehydrated in and of itself is very stressful on the body. It depletes your brain, and it causes a lot of inflammation, and it also slows down digestion in the body's natural detoxification process. So like I said, this is unsexy, but it's groundbreaking when it comes to actually activating your body's natural functions so that it can show up for you and perform.
Yeah.
So those would be the top three, like by far, just getting your steps in, getting your hydration in, and focusing on a high vegetable intake. If you literally just started there, your life could completely change. You will feel completely different if you just start with those foundations.
Yeah. Well, I love it. It's so funny. I'm just reminded of like you said, it's not that sexy oftentimes and people are looking for like something really out of the box. But I have, my first book, Euphoric, it's, all about ditching alcohol. And I have like a really small section about wellness. It's not like a wellness book by any means. But I talked about like, really eating as many vegetables as you can. And I got the most scathing one-star review from someone who probably adheres to like the more carnivore diet and just like, this is a horrible book promoting vegetables. And I was like, when did that become controversial? Like, are we serious right now? Like, that is now like some like weird politicized polarity type thing. Like, it's just so uncanny and stuff like that. But I've adhered to that for a long time because oftentimes as well, like when you're trying to change your lifestyle and stuff like that, it's so much easier to, I think, add into your diet and focus on like, how can I add more in instead of like, oh, cut this out, like bad, 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 bad. And so, like, for example, I eat like five vegetables just in for breakfast, and that already
Yes.
sets me up for the day because it's like,
Yeah.
even if, say, dinner was like, I don't know, you went somewhere and it's like a pizza party and didn't go according to plan for like your vegetable heavy dinner, it's like you already set yourself up in the morning, and then you can just keep adding to that over the day. And we did a fun challenge in my membership, the Euphoric, the club, all about like as eating as many vegetables as you can in the morning. And I love to
I
hear
love
people's
that.
like hacks and not just the morning, but the all day, but like the hacks that people do and just ways to like sneak it in. But it changes your mindset to like, let's nourish this body instead of let's deprive this body, you know?
Yes. Yes. I love that so much. I want to talk on that topic specifically about building back up and healing your metabolism, but I want to speak on the carnivore note because what I have seen and why people sometimes become so passionate about the carnivore diet is because they went from potentially eating vegetables and standard whatever diet if they're, if they live in America to a carnivore diet. And when you go to a fully carnivore diet, that usually does cut out ultra processed foods, fast food, a lot of the like boxed foods that have all kinds of gut disruptive substances in them. And then you go to a carnivore diet, and they oftentimes say, I lost all of this weight, my symptoms went away. And the reason that their symptoms went away is because when you have a broken digestive system, your body cannot properly digest vegetables. You
Mm.
will get symptoms from consuming whole foods. So I understand where they're coming from, but the true solve for your body experiencing bloating or brain fog or fatigue after trying to digest and break down whole real foods, the solve for that is not to remove whole foods. The solve for that is to figure out what's broken in your digestive system and to heal your digestive system.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. And
Yeah.
it's like there's just so much nuance I think that goes into it and like show that everyone has like a unique response and that, as you work with someone in a deeper level and just get the tests, you can see like there's so many deeper layers to healing. And I think that's something that's just been made so aware for my journey is that like, you think you're healthy and then it's like you go into another layer and into another layer and into another layer. And before you heal your gut, you have to like set up this and that, you know what I mean? And it's fascinating, but it's interesting because like the results are so worth it. And you get to a place where like you didn't even know you could feel this healthy or this good. And I love what you said, how it stretches your capacity capacity because so much of it is like, yeah, I mean, especially I do a lot of training new coaches and new business owners and stuff. And it's like super overwhelming to step into entrepreneurship and, launch a personal brand and all that kind of stuff. But it's so important to have this foundation down first so that you can stretch your capacity in that way. And I know that's something you talk about a lot. And so like, how do you see that changing in the women that you work with who are, living these busy lives, high stress, a lot on their shoulders and stuff like that? How do you see the differences in doing this work together?
Yeah. I think, what I see is that women that know that they are so easily overwhelmed and overstimulated, they don't feel like they can trust or rely on themselves to show up and do the work
Mm.
because they're scared because the feeling of overwhelm and the feeling of overstimulation is very uncomfortable. So it's kind of just like a trained behavior of I'm not going to sign myself up to do this really challenging thing because I know internally I already feel overwhelmed and overstimulated. I'm not going to sign up to go do that speaking gig because I already know that my nervous system isn't going to be able to handle it.
Mm.
And what I wish more women knew is that overstimulation and overwhelm is not just something that can be triggered by an external stressor. Internal stressors are what tax your nervous system. And when I say internal stressors, I'm talking about your microbiome state and the health of your digestion. You may be battling an H. pylori infection or parasites or yeast and bacterial overgrowth. Digestive inflammation really it starts the line of dysfunction whenever it comes to your other systems surrounding digestion being able to play the role that they're responsible for, because your digestive system is responsible for extracting your nutrients and energy. So if your digestive system is not extracting the resources that fuel your energy, like you're going to be more easily overwhelmed and overstimulated. And nutrient deficiencies, when your body doesn't have adequate resources, aka nutrients and minerals and caloric intake, your body is internally fighting a war that's activating your immune system. And that having your immune system being in a state of stress or high production for a long period of time absolutely sucks the life out of you. It will absolutely suck the life out of you because it causes inflammation. And inflammation is your immune system's response to threat. When your immune system has to deploy its inflammation response, your immune system sucks up a lot of your resources, your oxygen, your blood flow, your nutrients, your minerals, your energy. So when you can soothe and solve and heal nutrient deficiencies, repopulate the gut microbiome so it's actually able to absorb your nutrients and it's not inflamed anymore. When your liver is clear and functioning properly and your body's able to actually release your toxic load, that soothes inflammation. When your hormones are balanced and your body's producing enough stress hormone, enough testosterone, enough estrogen and progesterone, you are less stressed internally, which creates more capacity to hold stress, inconvenience, and challenge externally in your life. So it's just about like cleaning up the inflammation war going on inside so that you have more energy to provide to the things, your career, your family, your friends, like so that you can hold what they need from you. So
Yeah.
that's really the concept, is just settling the inflammation so that you can not be so impatient, not be so irritable, and you have more energy and motivation to really go after the big things in life and to feel like you can rely on your system to hold it when you get there.
Yeah. Oh, I love this so much because what you really bring so well in your work is like I'm sure most people have a goal of wanting to be healthier. Like that's probably an undercurrent for most people, but it's oftentimes so separate from our other goals, right? It's like,
Oh,
oh, then
yeah.
I have my career goals, my business goals over here. And sometimes the deeper why of wanting to be healthier, like if you're sick and you're not feeling good, then that's a deeper why. Other times the deeper why is like longevity, but also like sometimes you're not always thinking about living to 100 every single day of every single moment. You know what I mean? So it's often like this thing that can like get really brushed aside. So especially for someone like me who my business is like my like zone of genius. I love what I do. I'm passionate about my work. I love how you're able to bridge the deeper why of like really focusing on your health with some of the pursuits and passions that you're doing because we're not always obsessed with longevity or just curing this little symptoms or something like that to really like give us the language and articulate like this is how it matters and you know the science behind that as well. So I love your work. I'm sure we got listeners here who are going to come to your page and all that stuff. So we'll be sure to include it in the show notes. I have one last question for you. Okay, obviously, I just have this theory that successful people don't drink, right? Like, if we have the capacity to lead these huge movements, change the world, there's just no time for alcohol. And we know both of us the effect of how that alcohol is what it's doing on our body. And it's just such a common thing like that. And I'm just so curious how you're seeing like that mesh in with the like the health world, the career world of how like so many women are learning to like let go of these outdated patterns and like outdated almost cultural norms that we picked up when we were younger. Are you seeing that in your movement as well?
I mean, absolutely. Like transparently, before any client comes to work with me, I have the conversation with them about this work is going to require you to step away from drinking alcohol. So if you are not willing to do that, there's probably a different source of support that you need to go to before you come to my work. Um, when it comes to creating health and being a top performer and feeling damn good in your body, like alcohol cannot be part of the equation, period. And I was actually talking about this on my own podcast recently, and I said something that I actually got a little bit of backlash about, but I still stand 10 toes down to this statement. The statement is people that are not drinking are in the express lane past the people that are still allowing that to be a casual part of their life. Alcohol will only hold you back. There is nothing positive about it. There is too many studies about how inflammatory it is. And yeah, I mean, one of the main reasons why I stopped drinking alcohol, because I used to drink a lot growing up, like especially like in college, like that was my whole that was a big part of my lifestyle. But I got to the point where I was so desperate to feel peace of mind in my body that I fully dedicated my life and my work to figuring out how to heal my anxiety, depression, and discomfort in my system. And every single time that I took 5 steps forward in my diet and my lifestyle, and then I would have a drink one night, I literally felt like I took 10 steps backwards. And I was like, this shit is not worth it. Like, absolutely not. I just got completely fed up with it. And I think that a lot of people are starting to catch on that if you really do want to be on 100% of the time, if you want to be able to depend on your mind and your body to show up, we've got to stop putting it at a disadvantage by poisoning it with alcohol.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, 100 cheers for that. And I think it's just like the most intuitive people are always going to come to reevaluate alcohol because it's like if you're not intuitive, if you don't listen to your body, if you don't feel into like how you feel the next day after drinking, sure, you can just keep throwing it under a rug, keep doing it because it's expected of you or it's a habit or whatever. But if you're like really grounded in like that intuition, listening to yourself, to your body, to the different messages from your soul, your spirit, you know, your cells, how can you not come to that conclusion? Like, does literally anyone feel good the next day after drinking?
No,
So
it's
it's like,
literally not possible. And no one is immune. No one is immune to hangovers. If you feel like you don't have hangovers, you're used to you are used to feeling in a chronic state of inflammation. If
yeah,
you feel like you don't have hangovers, you don't even know how good your body can feel.
yeah.
That would be my argument.
I like the analogy of like imagine just hitting your hand on a wall over and over and over again. Eventually your hand will callus up and you'll stop feeling sensation there, but you're still like effing it up.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Amazing.
full stop for me.
Awesome. Well, I love talking to experts, and I just feel like your work is so unique out there. A lot has been said about functional medicine, but I really love how you're bringing in the high performance element too. I'm just so curious, do you have any plans on like writing a book and or sharing this like in a bigger, wider format?
I would love to. That's definitely on my vision board. But for the time being, I've just launched a podcast. So that is where I am making this work and the introduction to it a bit more accessible. My podcast is called Becoming Her by Leslie Jackson. So that's where I'm at right now. But I do have a really big vision for this because it changed my life. And the way that I've seen my clients' lives be transformed, I mean, I've seen clients that have come into me completely depleted, and then 3 months later, they're literally launching their business, or they're relaunching their business, or they're launching elements in their business that they didn't have the energy to pursue until they had the energy and the mental clarity to support them and being able to execute on that. And that just lights my soul up. So I get so excited every day to do this work. And so I don't see myself stopping anytime soon.
Amazing. Well, we'll be sure to link your podcast in the show notes, the info on where to find you and all this good stuff, but keep spreading the message. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Of course. Thank you so much.